This time on Film Ranker, we are counting down the films of acclaimed director Christopher Nolan. Known for his high-concept plots, impressive effects, and distinctive narrative and stylistic techniques, Nolan has become a darling of film critics and a staple of film studies classes everywhere. But even with all of that acclaim, the British director still has his share of detractors and a few films that have sparked divisive reactions. So let's count them down, from the pretty good to the definitely great. Following. Nolan's no-budget debut sets the stage for a lot of what is to come. There is a non-linear storyline, a big reveal, and a lot of people in suits. It's short at just over an hour and doesn't tell the deepest of stories, but for a film made with no money, no permits, minimal equipment, and a cast made up entirely of friends, it is a pretty impressive feat. Following is well worth tracking down. Insomnia. Nolan's first and least well-known major studio movie is a fairly good, though not particularly remarkable example of a genre. There are a few interesting scenes, such as the log chase, and Nolan does a good job of portraying Pacino's steady decline into kind of madness. Robin Williams is very good in a creepy role, though Al Pacino is in full-on hoo-ah mode of Scent of a Woman era. It is well shot and a fine psychological crime film, but it doesn't really do anything to justify its existence over the Norwegian original that was made just 5 years earlier. The Dark Knight Rises. There is a lot of hate out there for this film, and yes, there are some real flaws in the storytelling. Talia's reveal, Bane's plan, the cheesy Robin bit, the bulky runtime, etc., but it isn't a failure by any means. There are some great images, some memorable scenes, and we get a nice redemption story for Bruce. Also, Anne Hathaway, while no Michelle Pfeiffer, does a solid job as Catwoman. Plus, whether or not you liked his bold choices, Hardy is sure a whole flight of steps better than the Bane in Batman and Robin. Memento. Remember your one buddy that wouldn't shut up about this movie? It turns out he was mostly right. Memento is one heck of a launching point. The creative format of the film makes the audience just as unsure of what is happening as the characters. Nolan trusts you to follow along, providing enough detail for the casual moviegoer with extra bits below the surface for anyone who wants to dig or watch this film multiple times. It also helps when your guides are as good as Joey Pants and Carrie-Anne Moss. Dunkirk. This movie is as gorgeous as it is divisive. Its fans will say that it is one of the most beautiful war movies ever made. It feels like a vivid documentary told from land, sea, and sky. Its detractors will say that convoluted narrative structure makes it overly difficult to follow, and none of the characters are given any real weight. Both sides are totally correct. With Dunkirk, Nolan makes the war movie only he could make, and even if the patchwork non-conventional storytelling isn't for you, it is still worth the experience. Batman Begins. It's crazy to think that this film has almost the same runtime as Burton's 1989 Batman. Nolan creates a deep world with a lot of players who are given time to breathe. He also does a great job of making the world feel possible. This is the first Batman where the gadgets and secret identity and training and general physics of everything make sense. It's improbable, but not impossible. The one strike against the film comes in the last act. The final beats all feel rushed. Gotham doesn't really get the chance to go insane. Crane's defeat is kind of an afterthought. The escape cons aren't really a danger, and we never actually care about Rachel and Bruce. Even the Ra's al Ghul final battle feels a bit anticlimactic. Despite the flaws, this is still one of the best superhero origin stories, if not the best ever made. The Prestige. On the surface, this character-driven period piece about dueling magicians may look a bit out of place on this list, but It is maybe the most Nolan film that Christopher Nolan has ever made. He loves to have the form reflect the narrative, and it has never worked better than it does here. The movie is the magic trick, and it's a pretty darn clever one. Even if you figure out what the trick is, the showmanship is so good that you are more than happy to watch it all play out. The Dark Knight. This film is rightfully in the discussion of greatest superhero movies of all time. And at the heart of that is, of course, Heath Ledger's show-stopping, award-winning performance. The film does take its time at the start, and at the end maybe has some strange logic, but there is no denying the electricity of this film every time the Joker is on screen, which is also thanks in no small part to Nolan's direction. If you need convincing, just look at that perfect fleeting scene where Joker has his head out of the window during that one car chase. While the big moments steal the show, it's those tiny moments that really bring this film to life. Interstellar. This film can be a bit of a mixed bag for some people. The pace does get deliberate in parts, and it certainly gets bogged down a bit in the science, but it is a truly epic journey and a beautiful father-daughter story. Some will say that the end is a bit too tidy, but the journey is anything but. The road is littered with heartbreaking moments, complex relationships, and worthwhile questions. As long as you can take those necessary leaps, it is one of the better sci-fi films of the past 30 years, and a film that is distinctively Christopher Nolan. Inception. One of the biggest tricks of Inception is that despite its complexity, it is never inaccessible. The dream within a dream within a dream within a dream premise is novel and interesting, but Nolan keeps it digestible while finding new ways to visually stun us at every turn. Though what is more interesting than the dream logic or even the effects is the way that as we dive deeper into the layers, we get closer to the true heart of the film. The crime caper is a nice device, but really we are both emotionally and literally drawn down into the depth of Dom's psyche, and what we find doesn't disappoint. Also, how about that ending? And that wraps up another episode. Thanks so much for listening. Please let me know what you think in the comments about Nolan or this video, or how people from Saskatchewan call hoodies bunny hugs, or whatever you want. And as always, click the things to subscribe or see more, and hopefully I'll see you again next time.